The Oregon Ducks continue winning, but Utah is up next. The Oregon State Beavers are in the mix for the Pac-12 title, but they have to survive what's always a scary trip to Arizona. The Blazers get their season started, and I guess we'll probably talk some more Taylor Swift because I'm doing this podcast with a Swiftie, Brenna Greene. Welcome to the Oregonian Sports Podcast. I'm Aaron Fentress of the Oregonian, joined by Brenna Greene, the Swiftie, the resident Swiftie. Brenna, how are you?
Swiftie. I just want to say, in terms of Swifties, I'm definitely on the minor side. I love Taylor Swift. I love her music. I'm very excited. 1989 re-release coming out this Friday. Let's go. Very excited about that. But I would just say,
you don't want me to play it up? I'm playing it up too much?
I mean, you can if you want, but there are people that are more dedicated than I.
Well, of course.
Yes.
But
yeah,
but you're still a Swiftie.
Yeah,
and that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm in the generation of Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, her first album. I remember driving to school with my carpool group when her first album came out, and 4 girls all blasting our song to high school. So there you go.
I'm not hating. But before we get to our rundown, don't forget, you can subscribe to our subtext feature where you can receive insider content from myself, Bill Orm, and other reporters straight to your phone. The Oregonian staff coming to you directly via your phone. Who wouldn't want that? All you have to do is send a text to 503-386-0095, and you will receive a link that once you click it, you could start your 2-week trial. We're hyping this out. We're going to push this thing. We're going to have Ducks and content and Beavers content and Timbers content and Blazers content and every other kind of content you can think of coming directly to you. All right, here today we've got a lot on the rundown, man. This might be like a 5-hour show. But, Brenna, let's start with those Ducks. Now, you didn't cover that game. I didn't cover that game, but I was there. This is a side note. I was there because it was Parents' Weekend, and my daughter Karen is now a Duck. And so that makes me a Duck dad. That was only the 4th time in my life I've attended an Oregon game without working the game. And I even said, screw it, and bought me an eggshell Ducks hat and wore it. I know. Wow. And people were like, can you do that? I'm like, yeah, I'm paying tuition. I can do this. So I sat in the stands. Here's the thing, too. I am a press box snob. There's no doubt about it. I am spoiled. I want my food. I want my comfy seat. I want a latte in Seattle. You cover Seahawks games, right? They've got a latte bar, you know what I'm saying? Best food spread ever, too.
They right? Crush it there.
Yeah, they crush.
Yeah,
I don't have to deal with the weather. I'm not a rain guy. I'm not a cold guy. But it was fun. I had fun sitting out there. One, open air was nice. It was chilly, but not too bad. And my seats, section 25, row 66, were up a little bit, but not compared to the press box. It was a better seat than the press box seat. And it was just fun being out there, and especially when, during when they play the Oregon song, what's it called? I Left My Heart in Oregon.
Coming Home.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's always been brilliant. Every time I've ever watched that while covering a game, and then on Saturday, I always get chills. It's just amazing. It's perfectly edited. It's a beautiful piece of, fan sports art. It's just amazing. And then, of course, the oh my God, get a little louder now. Get a little bit quiet.
Shout.
Jeez, yeah. Sorry.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I've only been there for like 80 of them, but I forgot the name for a second. That was pretty cool, being in the crowd as opposed to being in the stands. So anyway, I had fun playing the man in the stands role, and I will probably do it again because I got a kid going there. All right, so the game itself. Ducks started out slowly. That's okay. Things happen. You're not going to blow out teams right away. Sometimes you got to get things going. And I'm going to give 100% credit to Washington State. After getting blasted 44-6 by Arizona, they came in with a very methodical, careful game plan that moved the ball. They played some solid defense to keep themselves in it until Oregon's overwhelming talent just took over and they finally won. But what was your take from that victory? Wasn't dominant until the end, but still a solid win over a pretty decent team.
Yeah, it took Oregon a little bit to kind of get going. It was one of those games where I didn't feel quite comfortable leaving my house at halftime, so I did my makeup for TV here while I was watching the game, which I found out, boy, didn't even think this through, but what a great call by me. I have a big mirror in my living room that I can like look at the mirror and then look at the game. Look at the mirror, look at the game. I'm looking at it right now. And I'm like, "Oh, this is great. Then why didn't I think of this before? This is genius. This is what challenge." So I found a new way to watch football and also be productive for my
That's
job.
important. That's important.
But anyways, yeah, I mean, it's one of those games where they took care of business, and I saw some ridiculous stat against like non-top 10 AP teams. They've won I forget what the actual number is. They've won straight. And I will give Oregon this. They do not fall. They have proven time and again. They do not fall when it is against a team of lesser caliber talent. And that, you know what? Like, there's too many teams to do that.
See, you're talking to a Duck historian here.
I know. Well, I'm saying recently. I'm saying in recent memory.
How recent?
Recent.
2 years?
Okay. Yeah, a few years. Okay. Not like, I'm not saying, okay, hi. I grew up an Oregon fan. I was there when they lost to Stanford, okay, with Joey Harrington, all right?
Do you remember 2019 when they lost to Arizona State?
Yes.
In 2021 when they lost to Stanford 2 weeks after beating Ohio State?
Yeah, that was bad.
And last year when they blew that lead at Oregon State?
I know, but I'm saying it was against.
But go ahead.
I know. I'm saying that they don't lose to bad teams or to, I don't know if I would qualify Wazoo as a quote unquote bad team, but they don't lose against teams that they should absolutely not lose to. So I will give Oregon that. They have really, done good at dominating that over the last however many years and doing better with the narrative that you just put out there, which by the way is true. It's true. Okay. So I will commend them for that. They do not play down to the level of competition that they are playing. So shouts to them for doing that, because there are some teams in college. Yep. There's some teams in college football that do not pass that test. So, gosh, how many? Even this Saturday there were a few where it was like, okay, I'm looking at you dub. They won that game, but we'll get to that. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop my rant on that before it starts. So yeah, it was a solid, nice Ducks win. I don't know if there's any, even yesterday Lanning was asked in his press conference, what did you want to learn something about your team every week. What did you learn about your team this week? And he basically was like, I don't know, that they love each other. Like, they're all celebrating each other. So that was cool. But he's like, but I don't know if I really learned that this week. So I'm not really sure if I learned anything. And I was like, yeah, that's about right. Like, okay. Like, I agree. Like, they did their jobs. They did their jobs. So yeah, there's nothing like big and sparkly to take away from it. I feel like, other than, and we will talk about this, Bucky Irving had a good game.
Right. So, but before we get to that, we'll talk about this first. Okay. Utah's next. Now, I've been on this narrative, especially on Talking Ducks, which airs on Roof Sports on Thursdays, by the way, and on YouTube. That
promote that
Oregon, from my perspective, has shown they have a good football team. I haven't come close to necessarily putting them in the national spotlight in my head that this is a playoff team yet, because the Oregon playoff caliber teams I've covered, I believe, beat this team by a couple touchdowns. And so this, if not more, the 2014 team probably boat races this team. So they need to show that they can defeat high-end competition. By far the best team they played was Washington, and that was a very good game. They lost. But now you have a Utah team that, one, is playing better because they've gotten healthier since they lost to Oregon State. Two, their defense is ridiculous. And this will be the first time all season that Oregon has had to deal with a team that could in fact, truly slow down their run game and get after their quarterback, right? And it's going to be on the road. So they didn't pass the UW test, but they did well enough against UW to, at least say this is a Pac-12 title contender still. But now this is a completely different animal from a defensive standpoint that their offense is going to face. And no, the Texas Tech win, to me, you barely beat a 500 team on the road. Big deal. The Colorado win, it was hyped coming into it, but Colorado was a 21-point dog for a reason because everyone knew that they weren't all that great, and they'll be lucky to be 6-6. So they're still looking for a signature victory.
Yep.
And this will be a chance for them to get one. And then you still have to deal with Oregon State and USC. And you still got to go to Arizona State, which didn't look frightening until they kind of handled UW a little bit defensively. And we know the history of going down there, especially 2019, when a playoff berth was sort of out there for them to go get, and they stumbled at the Sun Devils. So my question for you, Brenna Greene, Ducks 5.5-point favorites. Can they win this game?
Well, I also just would like to add with Arizona State. Hi, who's their head coach? Somebody who was on staff this last year, last season.
Dillingham. So
he's gonna know how to get Oregon where it hurts. Yes, I think so. I think the Ducks defense is better than what I think. I know Oregon's defense is better than USC's defense. That's not a question mark at this point. And
Brenna, you and I could put together a better defense than USC's defense. But go ahead. Point taken.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that if we're going with, the defenses being kind of the central focus of this game, which I think is fair to say, I think that Oregon's defense is better than Utah's offense. And I think that Oregon's offense is going to, they're just due for one or two big plays per game, if not two or three. So I think that and I don't think Utah's offense is at that level. So, I feel as though that they're going to be able to go in and get this win. Do I think it's going to be close? Do I think do I think that fans are going to be clenching their butt cheeks throughout this one? Yeah, I do. It's going to be gritty. It's going to be tough. And the Ducks know that. And by the way, they want to play games like that. That's, what Lanning's MO has been all year. So, we'll see how it goes. But I do feel like Oregon's offense is just more explosive than Utah's offense, and Oregon's defense is going to be able to contain that offense. Whereas I think Utah's defense will be able to mostly contain Oregon, but Oregon's offense is just, they're going to get a few things per game. Whereas I don't know if Utah's offense is as capable of that, but we'll find out. I mean, maybe the pig farmer goes out there and gets it done. What are your thoughts?
That is all fair. And I'm with you there. I'm leaning Oregon right now, but I'm not sure how I'll feel at the end of the week. But in 2019 in the Pac-12 title game, Utah entered that game with, I think, the number one rushing defense in the country. They were given like 58 yards a game. I think it's my recollection. Mm-hmm. So I went into that game feeling like they were going to slow down the run, get after Herbert. Utah wins that game. I think they're favored by 10. Something like that. And Oregon was able to exploit something in the middle of Utah's defense where they were just running just right up the gut. And Utah didn't adjust, and the Ducks rushed for a lot of yards. Verdell had a huge game, and they won that game. So sometimes, you can exploit certain things. And so this is going to be a test to see if Oregon can go into Utah and try and find a way to exploit their run defense, find a weakness they can exploit. They're giving up 78 yards rushing per game, and they have 25 sacks. So that means what they're doing is they're forcing teams in a lot of unenviable passing situations, and then they're getting after their quarterback, and that's why they're allowing only 15 points per game. So for me, the game will just hinge completely on Oregon's ability to run the football because Bo Nix is best when he has a running game to feed off of. We've yet to see Bo Nix, carry the team in a big game when the running game isn't there. Now, I mean, we've seen him have stretches where he's carrying the team, obviously, but usually the running game has been in play to some degree. So it'll be interesting. What's that?
Texas Tech?
I mean,
he was their top rusher that game.
But didn't they run the ball decently? I'm checking.
Yeah, go check. But I'm just thinking generally.
But is that a big game? But is that a big game against a good opponent? That's him doing it against an inferior team that he should be able to do that against, and they had to come back to win. But hold on a sec.
Yeah, I mean, I just know. I'm just thinking.
That's a game where they didn't run well. And Bo in the second half carried him, passing wise. But again, that's Texas
and also
Tech.
running wise.
But is that a big game?
Downs.
Is that a big game?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying in
terms
saying. Of that. But
so
I still think that if we're thinking of games that Bo really carried the team this year, it's that one. Anyways,
he's had games where he's quote unquote carried the team. I'm just saying in big games against good teams,
he's only played one big game.
Really? He's only played in his life at Oregon?
No. I'm saying this year.
I'm talking about at Oregon in general.
Okay.
At Oregon in general. And that counts this year. You're right. He's only had one big game this year. My point is he's yet to show it. We don't know if, there's no body of work to say he can do that when he's facing a lot of second, third, and longs. That's my point. Okay. Against a really good team, not a 500 Texas Tech team, or there might have been a team last year they did it against. The Oregon State game, granted he had the hurt foot, but things started going south in the Oregon State game. Bo Nix didn't elevate and carry the team to just one touchdown to keep Oregon State away. Anyway.
The Utah game last year, he basically played on one foot and they won that game.
But they won that game scoring one offensive touchdown, right? Because they got a defensive touchdown in that game.
Correct. I don't recall the exact.
Drove me nuts out to that game. I mean, Bo Nix was courageous and everything, but the defense won that game. And plus, Cam Rising was barely Cam Rising. Anyway, point being here is that if the running game is getting stuffed and they're in a lot of second, third, and longs, then it's going to fall on Nix and the receivers to make a lot of big plays to compensate for the lack of rushing attack, which is what they did at Texas Tech. You're 100% right. Can they do that against a Utah defense that has 25 sacks on the season, so they know how to get to the quarterback? That is going to be, to me, the game. If the running game's getting stuffed, If the running game's solid, I think Oregon wins. But what Utah wants to do is they want to shrink the game, right? They want to burn clock on offense. They want to keep you from getting big plays. They want to limit possessions. They want to shorten your possessions as much as possible by shutting down that run game, getting you off the field. And they're able to do that to most teams. But can they do that to Oregon? I don't know. But if they can stop the running game, I think they can.
Speaking of the running game, Bucky Irving,
speaking of.
You had some thoughts on Bucky.
No,
off air.
No, I mean, come on. Bucky's really good. I saw some people saying he's the most important player on the team. Maybe he should be in the Heisman race, et cetera, et cetera. And, Bo Nix is the single most important player on the team. There's just no doubt. Bucky Irving's really good. He's 12 carries per game. He's not carrying the team. He had a really good game against Washington State, but at the same time, some of those plays he made.
He had a decent game against UW too.
Yeah, some of the UW game, I was far more impressed with that because his running inside and his patience and hitting the hole and fighting through contact and things like that. This last game, like his three biggest plays, the swing pass for a touchdown. I mean, any running back in the country could score on that. No one was out there. And the guy who would have been in the best position to tackle him has back to him. It was a bizarre play on Washington State's part. He had a nice game. He's a complete back. I've seen so many good running backs at Oregon, right? That once people start talking about most important player or Heisman or team MVP, it's like I'm going to be very, very guarded and defensive against the players who truly attain that status by rushing for 1,800 yards, 20 touchdowns, producing over 2,000 yards of total offense, being MVP or true Heisman candidate like LaMichael, being a first-round pick like Jonathan Stewart, or even like Kenyon Barner, who rushed, I think he had 2,300 yards and 25 touchdowns or something like that his senior year. So yeah, Bucky Irving doing great things for the Ducks, no doubt. But anytime someone starts talking about any kind of all-time list, or my eyes glaze over. You got to be more of you got to carry more of the load than he's been asked to do to fall into that category for me.
I agree that he probably shouldn't be. Bo Nix is still the one that's the most important player on this team, and I agree that it should still be Bo Nix being the one pushed for the Heisman out of everyone. However, I do want to say that I think that Bucky's emotional impact on this team is something that maybe most people don't think about. Like, it's become very, very clear to me over the last 2 to 3 weeks, really 2, because they had a bye before UW, of how Bucky has developed into more of a leader on this squad. And I mean, I don't know, did you watch the cinematic recap of the game that they put out last night, that Oregon put out?
No, but I heard Lanning talking a lot about what you're talking about. But yeah.
And they had a clip in there of Bucky, just like, he had the whole team around him, or not the whole team, but like a lot of players around him. And he was like going in and kind of giving them a speech pregame about, what they needed to do. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, because I don't see that Bucky in interviews. Bucky's kind of quiet in interviews. So I will say that I think that his emotional impact on this team is maybe more than what people realize. And I think that he, you mentioned Dan Lanning said that, there's nobody who plays with more heart than him, and there's nobody who cares more about his teammates than him. And that's pretty big praise from him. So I think Bucky is a huge, is kind of an underrated leader on this team. I still think it goes Bo Nix, Brandon Dorless, and then everybody else. But of those everybody else's, I think Bucky is up there. So, that's kind of my thoughts on Bucky. I think that, he's had a huge impact on the field, but I think he also is having a huge impact on that locker room that people might not necessarily realize, especially if you just watch his media interviews, because let's be frank, he don't say much in those media interviews. He's not a talker. He's not a talker. I'm like, can you bring me more of that pregame Bucky, please? Give me that pregame Bucky and postgame Bucky. Okay. I want to see that. Come on, Bucky. Let's get it done.
He and that offensive line have the work cut out for them this week at Utah. We'll see what happens. Now, after the Oregon-Utah or Oregon-Washington game, a lot of people were like, oh, they might meet again in the Pac-12 title game. And they might. But I was like, hold on a second. Do people forget about this conference? There's likely an upset loss for one of them out there. And then they play good teams. Washington has to go to USC and Oregon State. Ducks play them as well, and then Utah this week. And lo and behold, I'm coming home from the Oregon game, and I'm like, oh, I forgot Huskies are playing tonight. So I have my son check the score in the back and on his phone. He's like, they're losing. I'm like, what? Or maybe it was 7-6. I can't remember. It was something it shouldn't have been. That's what it was. And they ended up winning. They pulled it out. But man, that was a classic example of how this conference, even the lower level teams, sometimes can rise up and cause trouble. Like I mentioned with 2019 with Arizona State. Even the undefeated Ducks team in 2010, they almost lost at Cal that year, 15-13. They had a punt return from Cliff Harris to pull that out. So there's still some scary dates coming up for all of these teams, but that coupled with the USC flop to Utah, what do those two events say to you, Brenna Greene, about this conference and how scary things remain for the Ducks?
Pac-12 is always the conference of cannibalism.
Right.
Like that's what the Pac-12 majors in. That's why. I mean, one of the huge reasons why the Pac-12 has not been in the college football playoff the last few years because whoever the leading team is in the conference always manages to lay a stinker, and you're like, gosh dang
really?
it. Yeah. It's a part of it.
No. I'm saying you. I'm parroting you. I'm saying you're like, really? That they lost, exactly. Not really to your comment. Sorry.
Yes, exactly.
I'm agreeing with you 100%.
Yeah. So, and by the way, backhandalism is probably one of the main reasons why this conference is not going to be this conference after next year or after this season. You get a few CFP teams in there, changes a lot of things. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm begging everybody. Stop going for it on 4th and 3 in UW's red zone. Okay? Like, do we have enough examples now? And both my sports producer and I were watching that game. And we both were like, all right, everybody's saying, if hindsight's 2020 and you don't know what's going to happen and, blah, blah, blah. And we both said before the ball snapped, we said, we don't like this play call. They need to kick the field goal. And we don't care if they score a touchdown on this play. We both think this is bad. And lo and behold, what happens? The lone Husky touchdown of the night comes on defense. Okay. You couldn't have written it better. All right. And I'm just absolutely flummoxed by the decision there when UW's offense couldn't do anything all night long. Go for the best that offense was going to do was going to go down the field and hit a field goal. So why don't you kick a field goal to go up by 4 points? So then you're still in the lead. Anyways, right. Rant over. I'm just so frustrated by that decision. And
clearly, wow, how much money you have on that game?
It just was. There were some expletives that flew as that ball was getting run down the field. That's all I gotta say. And I wasn't the only one in the country doing that. So yeah, USC's predictable, man. Everybody knew this was going to happen. They were going to lose to a team they probably shouldn't lose to. I mean, they should not be losing to a third string quarterback, period. End of story. When you have a Heisman quarterback on the other side, that shouldn't be happening. Okay. And supposedly all these incredible players on defense, which they have not really shown that this year. But whatever. And then, you claimed yourself to be one of the premier programs in the country, and then you don't put players up at the end of the game, post game. Just lame. Pansy. What are we, little sisters of the poor? Good Lord.
Lame. Even if people are upset and mad, you got to find 2 seniors who are adults and bring them out there.
Obviously the Oregon team was upset when they lost UW. They put Bo Nix, Jeff Bassa, and Troy Franklin out there, 3 of their leaders. Yeah. They said, all right, let's get it done.
Especially in the days of NIL when some of these guys are getting paid, you got to step up.
Yep.
You got to answer. Yep. You got to answer questions. You got fans out there who paid a lot of money to watch.
I don't even remember what your question was because I got so fired up about that 4th and 3 call. What was your question?
You answered it. It was just what this says about the conference and how, up in the air things remain. No one can assume much by what's happened so far. And we keep being shown that every week. And that holds true for this week's Oregon State at Arizona game. I had that penciled in as a win a while ago. And now, not so much. Arizona's scary. They barely lost to UW. Barely lost to UW. Barely lost to USC. Just destroyed Washington State. I fear for the Beavers this week. This is a scary game to go down there. I'm going to pick the Beavers to win, but this is by no means the given I thought it was a month ago. What say you?
A month ago, it felt like, oh, that's a nice game to come off of out of a bye week. Kind of nice little nice little like reintroduction, and then keep going. And now it kind of feels like, oh man, maybe you wish you had you were coming off of a win going into that one and had some momentum. Because having a week off is like, oh, maybe you kind of need that like that juice a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think they still win. I think Oregon State's defense is. They haven't been at the level that they were last year, but they're still pretty good, and I think that they'll be able to take care of business down there. It is a really interesting team with the fact that they got
7:30 game.
Oh,
Pac-12 at dark.
Yeah, Pac-12 at dark.
It could be very similar to that Washington State game they lost 38-35. I think it's going to be close and it's going to come down to something. That's my new thing. When games come down to something. Like something you can't predict.
Something. All right, that's very
block
specific.
Something, a miss something, a crazy fumble, going for it on 4th down 3 times, something that you can't predict. That X's and O's have nothing to do with. It's just going to be kids being kids playing football, and something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of where I see this. But, Oregon State, then they got at Colorado, Stanford, they should win that. And then you end with Washington and Oregon. Tough.
They should win the Colorado game and the.
Hey, again, what should got to do with it in this conference? They should. And Colorado should have beat Stanford.
To do with it.
Exactly. But I said this from the get-go. All I want is that Oregon State game to have Pac-12 title game berth on the line for both teams. That's my dream. That's my dream.
It's still a possibility. It's a possibility.
It's very much a possibility as long as Oregon State doesn't stumble these next 2 weeks on the road.
And Oregon doesn't stumble either. I mean,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, them too. We already talked about how I think they might stumble. Yes, you're right.
I mean, Oregon beats Utah. That's 2 losses for Utah. That's going to be tough for them to come back from.
Right.
And then you just got to hope that USC is going to fumble another time. They're going to. So, I mean, they should anyway. So you got that. And then, then that kind of clears the runway a little bit. So this game's actually pretty big in terms of this Oregon Utah game is actually pretty big in terms of setting that up down the road.
Right.
So
all right,
we shall see what happens. But yeah, gosh. Well, Blazer season starts tomorrow.
That's
something. Yeah, it does. I know.
Where is that game?
LA.
Oh, snap.
At least.
Oh, I got an alert to check into my flight to LA tomorrow.
I was going to say, at least you get a nice warm trip out of it, right?
I'm flying in day of, flying back early the next day. They got Orlando on Friday in their home opener. So we talked a lot about this team mostly over the summer and around Damian, and we've talked about the team since then. After 4 preseason games, after a bunch of availability following practices, I actually have more hope for this team to be solid than I did going into preseason. And I don't know if it's just me trying to convince myself so I can, psych myself up for the season.
Yeah.
But while I still don't believe they're going to reach the postseason and that clearly their number one goal is development, guys still want to win. Anthony Simon says, I want to make the playoffs. And they're going to play to try and win. But I like the idea for this team that now sort of the cloud of will they build a winner around Damian Lillard before his prime runs out is gone. That pressure is gone.
Yeah.
And so now for the first time, and I'm writing about this in my preview, for the first time since the 2012-13 season, which was Damian's rookie season, there's not even really necessarily a hope to make the postseason. That second season of his was like, okay, maybe they can do it this year, and they did it. They got in the playoffs, and they won 8 straight years. And all that time, it was an expectation to go to the playoffs, except for 2015-16, which they surprised everybody. And then these last few years, it's been this desperation thing because Dame's prime is running out. But now it's kind of like there's not that expectation. They're picked, their over-under is 28 wins. The players and Chauncey said they want to win, but development's more important, which means you're gonna concede certain things. Like Scoot Henderson is not the best point guard on this team. He's the third best point guard on this team, behind Simons and Brogdon. But he's gonna start because they're developing. But Chauncey made it clear that, hey, if he's struggling, I'm gonna take him out and play Brogdon more late in games. If the game's on the line, Scoot may come out, and Brogdon's going to be in there because he's a 30-year-old veteran guy who's been on good teams, been on contenders, and was 6th man of the year last year. And so it's just going to be interesting to see how it all comes together. And my 5 things that sort of must happen for them to shock everybody were, obviously, you got to fix the damn defense, which I think is possible. You have some good defense players on this team. Aiden's got to rise up and elevate his play. We'll know if Aiden wants to be an all-star or if he just cool being 18-10 and calling it good. Ant's got to fill Dame's shoes. Scoot's got to play. Obviously, he's going to be inconsistent, but at least be on a rookie of the year pace. And then, what was my last one? Ant, defense. Brogdon and Robert Williams. Give them the way better bench than they had last year. Those guys have to remain with the team, meaning Cronin can't trade them at the trade deadline to get draft picks or before. Because if you lose those two, the bench is just decimated because you have too many kids on the bench and then you're just done.
They trade those. We know what's going on.
Right. They're just so if all 5 of those things happen, they're in the playoffs. If 3 of those things happen, they're going to be in the mix for the play-in at the end, I believe. And by in the mix, I mean, a couple teams are going to have injuries and fall off. You went, like last year, I think the play-in was the 10th place team was 40-42. It's conceivable, though, that it could be 37 wins that gets you in or whatever. So if all those things come together, if this team gels and 3 months later they're still within striking distance, who knows what will happen? My money's still on them not doing it. But I do think there's a possibility, and I like the fact that this team is going into the season with no pressure. They can just let it all hang loose, play fun, play fast, get to know each other, grow as a team without the burden of trying to get Damian into contention.
Yeah,
That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
They have nice pieces. It's not like this is a tanking team where it's like, God, there's just nobody on this roster.
Right.
There's some really nice players on this roster.
3 of their top 7 players were on contenders last year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's not nothing.
No, it's not nothing. So yeah, I mean, there is a world in which they shock everybody. There is also a world in which they live, in which they play to the way people think they're going to play to. So there's, look, if you're around a team during the preseason and there's bad vibes already, let me tell you, it ain't going to go well. So vibes are good right now.
I love it when you go full slang. I do it too when I have to emphasize a point. You got to go full slang.
Yeah.
But you're right though. Like the vibes are good, right?
Yeah, they're great.
I mean,
everybody seems very happy.
Yeah.
Check back in with us in a month.
Exactly. If they're 10-20, are they still going to be happy? And that's what Brogdon talked about. He said, hey, one of the most important things we need to do is fight through adversity as a team and stay together when adversity hits. And it's probably going to hit. And I mentioned briefly 2015-16, that team, the over-under on that team was 23 wins. They built that team to lose. They wanted to tank that year. Mm-hmm. And they were, I think, 10-21 at one point. The tanking was looking good. And then all of a sudden, things clicked. And they started winning. And then there was a stretch from end of January to early March where I think they went like 18-4. It's crazy. I went back and looked at the schedule. And you see like all the L's. And all of a sudden, there's this long stretch of W's. You're like, and it just reminded you of how that team caught fire and won 44. They won almost twice as many games as their over-under, which is unheard of. And then they won a first-round series against the Clippers. Granted, Blake Griffin and CP3 got hurt in that series, but still. So this team went from some people, a lot. I mean, if you have a line of 23, and it stays there, that means a lot of people are betting under 23. So it went from a line where people were betting under 23 wins to winning 44 and a first round playoff series. Amazing that those things happen. So and I think this team has more hidden talent and gems than that team did, although that team, CJ, blew up that year. So anything can happen. I'm as a person covering the team, I'm hoping that they're at least within striking distance of the play-in come, February, just with, 4 or 5 games back, maybe, so that's just to make it a little interesting. But if they're not, then there's still going to be a lot of great storylines. Scoot's development, Sharp's development, Ant's growth, because he burst into an all-star caliber player, Ayton, as I talked about. So it should be interesting nonetheless. Are you jacked up?
I won't let myself get, too. Well, you want to know what?
Go ahead.
You talk about teams that, a team that, had a kind of remarkable turnaround. The Timbers almost did it, but they didn't quite pull it off. If you don't follow the Timbers, boy, did they have an interesting Saturday. First of all, the fact that they were even in the mix for the playoffs after they fired their head coach 2 months ago is pretty remarkable. Like, they were not playing well. I think they won minus their last 2 games. Before their last 2 games, they won or drew their last 8 games, which is pretty remarkable. That's pretty great. Then they lost their final 2. Granted, especially that last one against the Houston Dynamo, who is, by the way, the team that also caused their head coach to get fired. That's the team that scored 5 goals on them, and Gio got fired. And then they won. They were up 3-0, and it was a done deal at that point. Timbers scored a goal, but everybody knew they weren't going to come back from being down 3-0. So they lost 3-1. The Timbers had 6 different scenarios in which they could have made the playoffs.
6?
1.
Jeez.
Yes, 6.
Okay.
They entered the day in 7th place. 9 teams make it. They entered the day in 7th place. 1, simply win. Okay? 2, they draw. And then San Jose. Let's see here. Yeah, San Jose or Austin. If the San Jose Earthquakes draw, however you say that, I don't even know, against Austin, they would make it. If the Timbers had a draw against the Dynamo, this is another scenario for draw, and FC Dallas had a draw against the LA Galaxy, the Timbers would also make the playoffs. If the Timbers lost and the Earthquakes lost to Austin, they would make the playoffs. If the Timbers lost and FC Dallas lost to Galaxy, they would make the playoffs. Or if if they lost and Kansas City and Minnesota United drew, they would also make the playoffs. What happened, my fine friends? The Timbers lost. San Jose won. FC Dallas won. And Kansas City won. I believe it was Kansas City that won. So yeah, that's how they got knocked out of the playoffs. The perfect storm. It was very fascinating because Google has standings for the MLS updated in real time, depending upon the scores of games. So, I log in there and it puts Timbers in 10th. And I was like, whoa, shoot, everything's going wrong. And boy, was it. And that was at halftime, and that held. Like, it didn't change. Everybody did their part. So, or at least maybe San Jose. No, San Jose won. Yeah. So yeah. Quite a Saturday for them. They don't make the playoffs. Very interested to see what happens in their head coaching search now. Do they stay inside the organization and keep with Miles Joseph, who did, lead a remarkable turnaround? They did, sputter in the final 2 games, or do they go outside? So that's going to be a very interesting thing to follow the next, few weeks. I would say that they probably have a head coach within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would imagine. So that'll be fascinating to watch and follow. But yeah, just an all-out implosion. Everything that could go wrong went wrong for them. So, I mean, not many times you start the day in 7th and end the day in 10th. It's a pretty significant fall. So yeah, that's also the second straight year that the Timbers, if they won their final game, they would have gone to the playoffs in both years.
And they
lose their final game. So I know that you're not a big Timbers guy, but I thought that it was something we should probably talk about because
I hear you.
It's that's pretty remarkably bad. So, and I understand they were taking on a very difficult team in their last game. But there's some things out of their control. I mean, I guess it technically was within their control because they could have won some more games earlier or whatever, or not, draw or won a game here or there that wasn't a draw and not, draw. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's gonna be a really interesting offseason over there. Let's put it that way. I'm very fascinated to see where they take this head coaching decision because they have 2 very different options, and I'm interested to see how this unfolds. So, yeah.
All right. Moving on to the Blazers again before we get to Taylor Swift. Last night, the Blazers held their second annual media mixer where the media comes and hangs out with members of the franchise. Joe Cronin was there. Billups didn't show, though, and a few others were there. But they, surprisingly, Joe Becker was there, who was retired, but he showed up. And maybe they encouraged him to come because he was presented with a framed jersey, Blazers jersey, with Becker on the back and the number 39, marking his 39 years in broadcasting in the Portland market alone. And I was in high school when Joe Becker got here. And I remember, he was one of the faces because back then you didn't have all the avenues to watch sports highlights, especially high school highlights. But you had your local sports cast, and so I remember, watch Joe Becker forever. And then of course working at events, not with him in the same entity, but alongside of him. So that was always pretty cool. But it was an awesome gesture by the Blazers, especially with a staff that they haven't been here for Joe Becker's reign. I mean, Cronin's been around a long time though. So, but it was really cool. And he was stoked. He was so stoked. Like he was so happy. And later in the night, I was talking with Amanda and Maggie, who work for the team in the PR department. And Joe said, "Do you think anyone's ever worn 39? And I'm like, I can't imagine it that someone has. It's not a very sexy number. Right? It's not, you're dealing with, it's not like football where you have and even the NFL, you got like 60 guys counting practice squad or so. You got 15 probably. So how many are going to actually ever pick 39? And Maggie made the point, well, it could be something sentimental. Yeah, I go, yeah, maybe. But I'm saying there's no way there's more than there's over 5 and it might be 0. And then Amanda looked it up and sure enough, 0. No one's ever worn number 39. So Joe was even more excited. I'm like, well, shoot, they should just retire it. But really cool framed jersey, like I said. And man, guys like Joe and Dwight James have just been a part of the, Kerry Eggers, who's retired now, just been a part of the media landscape in this town for decades and just reported and covered on so many different things. And, it's just cool to see the Blazers, honor him like that. That was nice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Joe, I mean,
great guy too.
Joe,
nicest guy ever. He called me last night I tweeted out a photo of him with the jersey.
Yeah.
And Rasan Gathers, the head of their team side media stuff, and he asked me if he could screenshot it to send it to someone. What? No, Joe, that's my personal property, and you get out. But that's just how nice of a guy. He's I just wanted to check. But no, just a great human being, great guy, and yeah, I hope he comes to some games just for the heck of it, because it'd be nice to have him around. I'll miss him.
Yeah, no, Joe. I mean, Joe has been broadcasting in this market longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's certainly an institution around here, and he could have obviously, to me, he could have, I mean, I'm the new kid on the block. He doesn't need to be nice to me if he doesn't want to be, and he's always been great to me. So, yeah, very, very appreciative of that, and appreciative to say that at least for 1 year, I worked in the same market as Joe Becker. So
That's right.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, so while that was cool to see and a nice gesture, something that's not always cool to see, but I get it, is Taylor Swift.
He's so over it.
All over the place. Especially, it's one thing she's doing her Eras tour and, in the entertainment world, but now she's infiltrated the football world and it's just become madness. And I'm not saying I don't get it. I'm not even saying I'm necessarily against it. I'm just over it. And yeah, it's a get off my lawn moment. And I'm the old man yelling at a cloud. I get it. But on Instagram, I've come across videos sort of mocking the entire thing. And now I have to send them to you every time I get them. A few you've laughed at, a couple you seem semi-offended by. But no, you were never offended? Okay, good. Because they're going to keep coming. Anyway, so do you have a new spin on the Taylor Swift thing?
Well,
And by the thing, I mean she's dating Kansas City tight end Travis Kelce and put Kelce on the map, allegedly. Continue.
Look, if you're listening this deep into the podcast, you know what the thing is. I don't know. We don't need to go any further. While you have been talking, I've been trying to find this stat on how much. There we go. There it is.
I'm falling asleep while you're talking about Taylor Swift.
Oh, I'm so sorry for you.
Because the haters gonna hate.
Yeah.
Shake it off. Shake it off. Shake it off. I have that in my Spotify, by the way.
I don't like that Taylor Swift song.
You don't? That's the jam. Listen to me. I'm mocking the whole thing now. I'm like, that's the jam. What are you talking about? All right, go ahead.
Okay, here's the stat. In the 4 games Taylor Swift has been in attendance, Travis Kelce is averaging 108 receiving yards per game. The game she was not, he was averaging 46.5. So
she's carrying the squad.
Yeah, I mean, this is all her. Yeah. And, post game, Andy Reid said, Taylor can come around as much as she wants. It seems to be working out quite well.
Is that what he said?
He did. He said that. I was like along those lines, Taylor Swift can keep coming. Like, this is working for me. So I mean, at least I'm just thankful that we don't have to deal with all the dumb narratives and at some point it is going to come. It's going to come. He's going to have a bad game and there's going to be this narrative out there that's super stupid. That's like, oh, is this Taylor Swift's fault? It's not Taylor Swift's fault. You know what would be really funny though, is if that narrative gets out there when she goes on tour in November.
Oh, that's right. She got to go to Europe, right?
No, she's
Asia?
going to
South America.
South America. So
how do I know that? How do I know that? Jeez.
I think I might have said it to you last week to be completely fair. So when she goes on tour to South America for a few weeks, she's not going to be here. And I'm actually going to laugh my butt off if he has a bad game without her there. I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, are they going to come out and say this is Taylor Swift's fault? Because I'm just waiting for the bad game that he does have when she's there. And they're going to come out and say that it's her fault, which is ridiculous. Okay. Ridiculous. But, that's what being a female in this world's all about. So I don't see female athletes having bad games and having it getting blamed on their boyfriends.
Well, maybe if one of them's dating Drake or Usher or Timberlake, it might be.
Maybe.
Just saying. All right, full disclosure. I know I kind of make fun of this, but I drafted Kelce first round in my fantasy draft. So,
ooh,
Taylor, girlfriend, you keep going to those games. As a matter of fact, in between your concert shows in South America, I need you to just fly to the game. Even if you have a concert that night, you can do it. I'm sure you have a special jet that'll get you back and forth real quick because you're helping out my team. So I'm with it.
Let's look at these concert dates and if when they fall. I mean, I'm sure one of them. I'm sure there's ones on Saturdays. Let's see here. Okay. Let's see here. The Eras Tour. Here we go. Oh, she has one. Wait. No, that's 2024. Okay. Sorry. I'm looking at 2024, not 2023. I got to look at the international dates, baby.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're looking at.
Please.
All right. Thursday, November 9th, Friday, November 10th, Saturday, November 11th. Break. Friday, November 17th, Saturday, November 18th, Sunday, November 19th. Now, I do know that there is also a game in there in which the Chiefs play in Frankfurt at some point. So.
Oh, man. So she's going to miss a game. So I'll sit Kelce
that might not be possible.
I'll sit Kelce that week. I'll start Cole Kmet.
Yeah, that's November 5th. So that's before. Let's see. That is before she goes to South America, but I don't think she's going to be making the trip to Frankfurt before going to South America. Like that seems like a little much. So probably our last shot at Taylor Swift. Will Taylor Swift go to Denver for the Broncos game next week? That's October 29th. And then, yeah, the Chiefs play again on November 20th. So I don't think she'll make that one either because that's... Oh, wait, that's a Monday night game? It's a Monday night game. So maybe she pulls the swing from, let's see here, Brazil to Kansas City. That'd be a lot.
Go.
But hey, it actually kind of often works.
We will be sure on the Oregonian Sports Podcast to keep you up to date on Taylor Swift's travels.
That's all everybody comes
how
here for.
How they impact the Kansas City football team. Anyway, we're going to escape on that note because I'm going to lose my mind. No, I'm kidding. All right. Thanks for listening to the Oregonian Sports Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our subtext feature where you can receive insider content from myself, Bill Orm, our columnist, and other reporters. I promise you we will not subtext you about Taylor Swift. You have that in writing. I'm air writing right now. All you have to do is text 503-386-0095 and you will receive a link that you can click and start your 2-week trial. Thanks for listening. Click that subscribe button to this podcast and leave us a positive rating. Also, we're starting to post these podcasts through video on YouTube, our YouTube channel on YouTube, the Oregon on YouTube. So you can find this, and you can actually see us, and you can see all the times that Brenna rolls her eyes when I say something she doesn't like, and vice versa. It's an added feature to this show that you must enjoy. So thanks for listening. We'll be back soon.